All right, so today we're going to look at another way that you can find ideas for PR campaigns, and I call this one the supply and demand technique. So what you do is you start with a high volume keyword in your niche. You stick intitle, that keyword, into Google News, and then you sort of play around with different variations of that keyword until you find something that there's clearly a lot of demand for. Then when you found something that there's a lot of demand for, you go back and you Google that keyword and see how good the information there is on Google. And then when you found an imbalance between supply and demand, so high demand and poor supply, then you know you've got a good idea. So I know that was like a little bit abstract, but it's quite simple when you look at it. So I'm going to use the example of an employment lawyer. So this is Duncan Lewis, employment law solicitors, pay issues at work. And this is the type of stuff they deal with. So out of all of these, I'm just going to go for what I think has the broadest appeal, like it applies to the most amount of people, and that's a national minimum wage. So I put minimum wage into Ahrefs, and I see that's got like a ton of search volume in the UK. So then what I do is I put intitle minimum wage into Google, and I set it to pass into Google News specifically. I set it to past year. And this is like your big head term. So what you want to do is you want to look at the stories, and you want to from what you see in the stories, you want to let that decide what's the next keyword you're going to use, right? So this is kind of too broad, so we need to like niche it down a little bit or narrow it down a little bit. So minimum wage rise, minimum wage increase, UK pauses drive to rise minimum wage. What are the implications of the rising minimum wage? Okay, so clearly minimum wage rise is a thing, so let's go minimum wage rise. Minimum wage rise gives boost to 2.7 lowest paid jobs. Rise in minimum wage leaves millions short of real living wage. Lowest paid will be $1,000 short of figure. That actually affects household costs. So now I'm thinking like I could do something that like crunches the numbers about like does the minimum wage actually cover your living costs? So I'm going to Google that. Like, can you live on the minimum wage UK? I see that the answer is the top answer is Quora, which is kind of just like speculation. We can click through to here. So there's not there's not actually a proper answer to it. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go like potential headline. Can you actually live on the minimum wage? So that's one potential headline. Let's go intitle live on minimum wage. Wage exemption for living workers. How much income is needed to live in the UK? P&O admits he could not live on £4.87 per crew pay. So that's under the minimum wage. Cannot afford to live. So there's a lot of newspapers talking about this. A lot of this is in the news a lot. Like we can even set it to last month. We cannot afford to live. That's New York, doesn't count. let's go. Does this work? Like UK. Title: live on minimum wage. Cannot afford to live. So this story is published a lot, but it's more of like an American thing. I'm going to go back to past year. Working full time at the national wage. So this is something people write about, and there isn't really like proper article on it, which makes me think if we do like a proper study into it, then there's a newsworthy story there. But the downside of that is like a proper study will be quite difficult to do. So let's see if there's anything easy you can do. So I see here, Peer No Boss admits he could not live on £4.87. The minimum wage in the UK is higher than £4.87. It's £11.44. So I'm going to go less than minimum wage. I make less than minimum wage for running from running my post office. To get less than minimum wage. Paid less than minimum wage. Okay, let's see if we can go on to the past month. Nearly half of that was less than minimum wage 1 month ago, less than minimum wage 2 weeks ago. Paid less than minimum wage. So again, this is something that happens a lot. This is something that's written about a lot in the news, clearly. So I'm going to go line. How many people are paid less than minimum wage? And I accept that there is a degree of creativity you need here. Like I'm sort of turning these findings into headlines, and that's just something that comes with practice. You're not going to find the exact answer there, but it's just to give you ideas. But then we Google how many people are paid less than minimum wage, national minimum wage statistics. Click through. Now this is like an authoritative source. I think if a journalist is given, like, if a private company comes to a journalist and gives them some data on this, and then they can just Google the data and they see that there's this parliamentary data, they're going to trust the parliamentary data. They're not going to trust us. But let's just see what it says. The Local Commission estimates that there are around 1.6 million workers paid at or below the minimum wage. At or below, so it does not say below. So it's at or below. So we can actually create something better if we can work out how many people are paid less than the minimum wage. Not at the minimum wage and less than the minimum wage, but less than the minimum wage only. Then that's a potential headline that does not seem to exist at the moment. So then the next thing you look at is like, can we actually find this information? So I know that the Office of National Statistics in the UK publish a lot of salary data. So let's go Office of National Statistics salary data. Earnings and working hours. Average weekly earnings in Great Britain. Fuel data used in the statistical bulletin. Average weekly earnings. Total pay. So here we do have the weekly earnings. Done by So these are the weekly earnings by sector, by industry that you work in. So let's say March 2024, weekly earnings in wholesaling, retailing, and hotels is $440 per week. Is the minimum wage 11.44? So there are 40 working hours in a week. So you go 11.44 multiplied by 40. That's 457. So 457 is higher than these. So that suggests that there are some people being paid less than the minimum wage. So there's a story here. How many people are being paid less than the minimum wage? Now we want to think about newsification. Can we segment this by job, location, gender, ethnicity, age? Some of the key groups. So if you can be like, 10% of cleaners earn less than minimum wage, we could get in like cleaning magazines. Location's a very obvious one. If we can be like 30% of people in Manchester earn less than the minimum wage, then newspapers like the Manchester Evening News and stuff like that will want to publish that. Gender, we could tie into the gender wage gap. Ethnicity, it's a touchy subject. And then age, people talk a lot about age description. So you've got by industry, which is, we can do that. And then we've also got, let's see if we can do by region. Data set of earnings and hours worked by region and industry. And again, you have median earnings by region. And then it breaks it down. It's like full male, female, full-time, part-time. So again, if any of these, or even any of these, are lower than this number, then we've got a story. Oh shit, where did that go? And as you can see, quite a lot of these are lower than that. So yeah, there's the story. So we just got to crunch these numbers together. And then, yeah, we can say this is the number of people earning less than the minimum wage. But again, the key here is this demand. If you can see that journalists are writing about this, and are writing about this recently and in volume, And then you can also see that how many people are earning less than minimum wage UK. And then you can see the answer just isn't good enough. Estimates that around 1.6 million people being paid at or below the minimum wage. It's not below the minimum wage, it's at or below the minimum wage. And clearly journalists care about people being paid less than minimum wage. I mean, it's breaking the law, but there isn't information about this. The information is about at or below the minimum wage. That could mean that 1.6 million people are being paid at the minimum wage, but the journalists want to know about who's being paid below the minimum wage. That, combined with the fact that we have this information that says that, means that we've got a story on our hands. So again, it all goes back to playing around with the intitle operator, seeing what the demand is, seeing where the demand is, and then Googling those keywords and seeing what the supply is. If we can create something better than what's there, that feeds these types of stories better than what's already there on Google, then you've got an angle.